If you guys haven't noticed, the stage has changed a little bit. We've been joined by a lot of technological devices. So over the next 50 minutes or so, hopefully you're going to see a little bit about what we're doing here at Google around some of these technologies in the cloud. But I wanted to start off a little bit by just talking about what is the future of work. And we think that work is fundamentally changing in the marketplace today. The way people get things done today is different than it was just a couple of years ago. But that's not really a new trend, right? Work has always changed with the pace of technology. If you go all the way back to the quill and scroll, the first time you had the written word, the nature of work fundamentally changed, or the abacus, or the printing press, totally altered the landscape of what it was people did and how they got work done, up to the telephone, and now you could actually have remote communication and talk to people who weren't physically there. And that sped up the pace of work and the pace of business pretty dramatically. And you get to the mainframe, and what the mainframe and the computing evolution that entailed allowed for work to happen, what we could do, the nature of business, how much information we could process, how much we could understand about what our business was doing changed. And then the PC came along, and the PC was a lot about personal liberation. The nature of work changed because I can now have a lot of technology, a lot of capability as an individual, at a department level. But the interesting thing that I think is different about the evolution with the cloud and the next generation of work is that all of these technologies were technologies that primarily evolved, maybe with the exception of the quill and scroll, within the enterprise. Right? The first time you had a mainframe was in the enterprise. In fact, you never got one at home. The printing press was a technology for business, at business. It was an enterprise technology. And so the nature of work evolved as the tools you used to do that work evolved. And so as your tools at work changed, what you did change. And the different thing now with the evolution of work that we see happening is that the nature of work is changing, but it's being driven by technology, but not the technology you have access to at work, the technologies you have access to at home that have altered the global landscape and the way people operate and communicate. And the simple example for this is, I think Dave asked, but how many folks actually support iPhone in the enterprise today? Wow, that's like half the audience. And how many of those who don't have been asked to support iPhone in your enterprise? That's the other half, right? Not a technology that was built for the enterprise, not a technology that Apple particularly markets to the enterprise, but a technology that we've seen adopted in the enterprise because people were using it and they were productive with it. I'd say similar things about Android. Does anybody here support Android in their enterprise environment? 25%, that's pretty good. And how about this device? I'm curious. Who has iPads officially supported in their environment? So about 25%. Now, of those who don't, who have been asked to support iPads by someone in the executive management team? Yeah, most of the rest. Because everybody's buying these devices. These devices change the way people communicate. They change the way people collaborate, the way people interact with information. But it wasn't just these technologies, right? If you think about the first instant messaging application that we ever had, that happened in the consumer world, right? AIM, and it evolved into the corporation. You see people at work using AIM, and then we blocked it, trying to restrict information. We didn't have an alternative. The first wikis, Wikipedia, the first blogs, these were all technologies that evolved in this consumer space, and they changed the way people think about communication. They changed the way people think about collaboration, but they weren't actually adopted within the enterprise. And I would argue that as this consumer technology has continued to race ahead and is changing at an almost breakneck pace, somewhere around a decade ago, enterprise technology took a turn, right? We almost stopped. If you look at the average technology that an information worker has access to today, it's a decade-old paradigm. You got a PC, looks a lot like the laptop I had 10 years ago. Right? You got Office on it. Half the companies in the world are still running on Office 2003, which is code that's literally nearly a decade old, not just a model, but the entire application base is actually a decade old. And so sometime about a decade ago, in the enterprise world, our technology innovation, our new technology stopped, but the consumer world didn't. And so consumers, our customers, have continued to get access to new and different innovations, technologies, ways to communicate, and they've been asking us to bring them into the enterprise ever since. And these technologies have fundamentally altered the business landscape. And if I were to sum up in a single word what's different about the world today because of these technologies, the word would be speed. Everything today happens faster. You get information faster, you distribute information faster, your customers ask for things more quickly, right? Your suppliers are moving more quickly, the market is changing more quickly. Everything about the way we do business happens at a different speed, all of it. And the challenge that we have as businesses and as IT professionals is how do we enable our businesses to move at the speed that we see global businesses, that we see our customers, that we see our competitors moving at? How do we enable that kind of speed within our own enterprise? And that's the real challenge that we have today. And I think this breaks down in terms of the challenge that our users face, because our users are now facing a different kind of challenge based on this speed as well. And I want to talk about 3 primary areas where I think users are facing major struggles related to this change in technology, change in pace of business. The first is there's just an enormous amount of information in the world, and we are all kind of swimming in it. We're buried in it. Does anybody feel this way with their email? Sitting in this room today, is your email box going to look nice when you get home tonight? No, not so good. A couple of quick facts. There are now, throughout the world, 294 billion emails sent every day. 300 billion emails, that's about 50 emails for every man, woman, and child anywhere on the planet that are being sent around the world today. That's astronomical. 10 years ago, nobody got 50 emails. And now, most of us get well more than 50. The average person gets 50. 1.2 zettabytes of digital information now exists in the world. Does anybody know what a zettabyte is? A zettabyte is 1 billion petabytes. 1 billion petabytes of information. It's an unbelievable amount of information that we are culling through to find what we want. Another stat we didn't put on the slide here, every minute, 24 hours of video is uploaded to YouTube. That's the equivalent of 130,000 feature-length films being released every week. And that's the volume of information flowing into a service like YouTube. So that's the world we live in, right? There's a massive amount of information we're trying to deal with. In the corporate side, the average information worker now spends 13 hours a week just dealing with email, just managing your email inbox. And that's up dramatically from just a couple of years ago. And this whole process is, how do I deal with information? How do I find the good information? And so technologies have to find a way to help you with this. Unfortunately, recently, they might have gone the other way, right? So now I'm spending 13 hours a week on email, but how many am I spending on Twitter, on Facebook, on Foursquare, on instant messaging? This is a major challenge facing all of our users. How do we deal with this volume of information? How do we separate the wheat from the chaff and really find the quality information we need? The second challenge, I would argue, is that collaboration has become central to everything we do in business. People often talk about the best personal productivity tool they find. I say, what is personal today about productivity? Everything I do requires at least a couple people to collaborate with me. I need tools that are collaborative productivity, not personal productivity. I think we mentioned earlier, Carson mentioned the future of work and the Future Foundation study that was done on the future of work. And a very interesting thing was found here. They did a study on companies that were considered collaborative by their employees and companies that were considered innovative. And there was an 81% correlation that the more collaborative your company was, the more innovative your company was. And in a world where everything changes at an amazing speed, the challenge we have is, how do we be more innovative? And the clear answer is, we have to be more collaborative. And so as we look at technologies for our users, what can we do to enable more collaboration with those technologies? How do we bring people together versus separating them into their own personal worlds of isolated productivity? We need to bring more people together. The third point, I think, for users is that mobile work is now becoming the norm. And you heard a lot about this during the panel, right? People work, I won't say anytime, anywhere, Don. Apparently that's not the right phrase. But people are working all the time, almost everywhere, right? I see people working in coffee shops. I do work in my, in bed. I wake up and I read my email on my phone. I'm not sure if that's good or bad. My wife has determined that I'm going to be buried with my smartphone. I'm not sure if that's good or bad. But everywhere you go, people are working different places. And they need to be productive in those places that they are. Interesting statistic from IDC. In the year 2013, this is the percentage of workers in various areas that will be mobile, that will spend some time outside the office. In the US and Japan, that number will be north of 75% of workers will be mobile for some portion of their workday. In Western Europe, that percentage will reach over 50%. And in the broader Asia-Pacific region, it's a little lower in the 30s. But that means that in most of our markets, the majority of our workers spend some of their time away from the office. How much capability are we giving them to get work done when they're away from the office? Do they need a PC? Can they get their work done on a phone? Can they get their work done on an iPad? How are they going to connect? Those are major questions impacting how this will play out in our businesses. Another interesting fact done by iPass, one of the global Wi-Fi providers, found that the average that 97% of mobile workers today carry more than 2 devices at them with any particular time, right? You got at least a phone and a laptop. More than 50% carry 3 or more devices. And I personally carry more than 3, but I'm not going to say how many for privacy's sake, but it's well more than 3 devices that I think I carry, and probably a lot of you came to this conference with more than a cell phone and a laptop as well. So this, how do I provide access mobile-wise, but also across a variety of devices? I'm not having a single device that's my productivity device now. I've got 4 or 5 or 6 devices. How do I enable work in a world where that's true? And so while all these technologies have raced ahead and work has changed, our technology hasn't. But I would argue that that's not for lack of trying by folks in the room. I'm not trying to point a finger and say, you guys have done a bad job, why haven't we enabled more productive work? But technology has gotten very difficult, right? As we try to evolve and deploy the technologies available to solve these kinds of challenges, we ran into a number of difficulties, right? You look at this, it's very complex. Can you deploy some of this stuff? Yeah, but there's a lot of stuff involved. It's very expensive, right? So the more I deploy, the more expensive I get. And it is not a linear scale, right? The more I deploy, the more expensive each unit gets because there's just more and more complexity in my environment. It unleashes new security vulnerabilities for my environment. When I put devices out there, when I've got mobile devices, when I've got web applications, I start to wonder, how do I deal with the security of those systems? How do I open them up to access from anywhere and yet keep them secure? And finally, I think a lot of our technology resulted in a sense of inertia. Once you built all this stuff up, it was really hard to move quickly anymore. You couldn't just change things instantaneously because you had a lot of capital investment, a lot of time invested in building the infrastructure that you have today. And so as we built this technology stack around us, we ended up with complex, costly environment that kind of slowed us down from moving quickly the way our users are demanding. And I think the cloud provides the opportunity to change a lot of those dynamics and provide a way for you to provide a lot of these services to your users without some of those challenges and difficulties. Specifically, I think the cloud provides a lot of flexibility. You can flexibility on the server side, but also flexibility on the client side. What kind of devices am I going to use to access? Where am I going to access it from? It's obviously low cost, but I think that's probably the least interesting part of the cloud today. We also think the cloud is fundamentally more secure. The security is a huge advantage of moving to the cloud. And as Dave said, we'll be talking a little bit more about the specifics of why that is later today. And finally, the cloud enables speed. I think it enables speed of integration, speed of collaboration and communication, but also speed of innovation. Right? We can update the cloud. Google pushes code to servers roughly every 2 weeks for most of our applications. We're able to provide new functionality to users with no upgrades on the client side, no upgrades on the server side, just a fast pace of innovation in a way that a traditional legacy IT system simply cannot provide to the business. So we think this is going to be a large part of the solution to the problems that have been facing IT and dealing with how do we meet the needs of our users in this new way we work. So I want to, as I end here, I want to very briefly talk about what Google is investing in terms of technologies to provide to businesses and where we see ourselves headed in the enterprise arena. And I really put kind of 2 layers of this. The first is our applications. And we think of these in 3 buckets. I call them ours, yours, and theirs. So our applications that we call Google Apps. And here we're focused on horizontally useful communication and collaboration. Email, documents, sites, things that, point-to-point communication from any device. How do we enable all the workers in your environment to communicate and collaborate more effectively? And that's kind of the set of applications we're focused on building. The second in here is your applications. We think the cloud brings a lot of benefits to people who are building their own applications. And so we have a product called Google App Engine for Business, that allows you to develop your own applications on top of the Google stack, leveraging our scalability and flexibility and security models, but to have your own custom applications. And the third, I think Dave talked about more than 200 applications in the Google Apps Marketplace today. How do we enable the cloud as a place that you can go and buy third-party applications from a variety of vendors and trust their security and integrate very easily into the applications that you're buying from other cloud vendors? And so the 2 items on top here, we think it's very important as we build out all 3 of these kinds of applications that we enable integration to existing on-premise systems and to other cloud providers, because none of this is going to work in an isolated bubble, right? All these systems have to talk to each other. They have to integrate and communicate effectively. And so we're very interested in how we enable that. The final piece of this is what I call the access technologies. And here we're talking about Chrome, our web browser, Chrome OS, the operating system that we think is uniquely built for the cloud, based solely around web-based applications, and we'll show you some more about that tomorrow. And then the Android mobile platform. And so we're investing very heavily in all of these different areas of technology, from our platform to our applications to our access technologies, and trying to use a unified cloud management platform so that you can manage the applications, the users, and the security across all of these from a single place. And we think this model provides a lot of benefits for businesses that are adopting the cloud. So hopefully that gives you a picture of where I think we're headed. I want to invite up on stage at this time Robin Williamson, our Director of Engineering at EMEA, who can talk a little bit more about how we go about building these technologies in the Google Cloud.